Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshiah Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, brothers and sisters, is brought to you from Danitepublications. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. Brothers and sisters, we hope and pray that you all will subscribe to the channel, as well as comment, like, and share. We are on Mori Yeshiah History Lessons, as well as the Facebook page, Yeshiah Author Danite. So, brothers and sisters, this is a continuation from the presentation that was done last night on the same set channels. So, we are African, but are not Israelites, part 2. And there are several topics, while not being in the spirit of debating, that a brother wants to bring out for this in reference purposes. That is one, as we pointed out last night, geographically through the tectonic plates understanding, that the land of Israel can be said to be both in what is referred to as the continent of Asia, as well as the continent of Africa. We also pointed out, brothers and sisters, that the Suez Canal, built in the 19th century, is what divided the African and the Asian continent. Brothers and sisters, we pointed out that there were people in the ancient world, dating from the era before even the Roman Empire and inclusive of the Roman Empire, that traveled back and forth in between those lands. You understand? So, brothers and sisters, in this matter and in this presentation, what we care to bring out, what we care to show for reference purposes, is the part 2 of this in this particular case. So again, we hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. We are going to, brothers and sisters, pull up the live stream, and that is to say, pull up the PowerPoint in this particular case. And shalom, my brother Yirmiyahu, my shalom ka. We are going to pull up, brothers and sisters, the PowerPoint and continue in part from where we left off last night in the presentation. All right. Some of the slides are from the same presentation that we did last night, but we want to recap and what we're talking about. All right. So in this, brothers and sisters, let us get into this, speak upon this, and so forth. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well and people are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. I understand it's the Shabbat, so-called Saturday. I understand that there are people that are doing their own programs on their own channels, and there are people who have an audience, if you want to say, in that particular case. So I understand that for my platform, not to sound haughty, this may seem like, again, an unusual time. That this is something that is not in the standard of the time frame in which a brother does a presentation. But there's something I want to point out, if I may. Thank you for that, for my brother. And that is, we want to keep the channel active. And to the people who subscribe to the channel, whether you watch the presentation now or whether you watch the presentation later, we want to give you the respect that you all took out the time to even want to sit there and hear a brother do a presentation and such. It means a lot to me in this particular case. So I have been on other people's platforms, other people's YouTube channels. I have been, brothers and sisters, in other people's congregations. And one of the things I point out is this: I will never try to insinuate or suggest that Israel should not be among Israel and said a camp setting or so forth. Because there was through, on a human level, a camp setting that the Creator brought my mother, who brought me into this understanding. So I can't sit there and say, don't go to camps and camps is bad and all of this kind of so forth and so on. The first camp went to was a place called Kol She'erit in the Bronx. Then we went to a place that no longer exists, called Beni Adat, called Beit Yisrael. That being in 1990, if I remember correctly. Then we went to a place called Yeshiah Yisrael That was in 1992. And the reason why we went to Ashaba was nothing against Beni Adat, was because it was closer to where we were living at the time in Queens, in New York. Between the ages of 12, from the time I got into Ashaba until the age of 15, when Ashaba merged with Beni Adat in 1995 or so. Those years, 12, 13, 14, 15, in my life were very, very, for the lack of a better term, impressionable. You understand? It was a time in which I met some of my best teachers, and this is not to knock any other teacher, brothers and sisters, but that definitely was a landmark to me in my life. And that is something that I hold near and dear to me, brothers and sisters. And so, brothers and sisters, without any further ado, in this particular case, we want to get into this particular matter, hoping and praying that everybody is well and will be better. We hope and pray, brothers and sisters, that you all had an excellent night, that you all had a good night, and we intend, brothers and sisters, in the spirit of love and unity, to bring this out to the family. We do not profess on this platform to know everything, and we are open, brothers and sisters, to constructive criticism. And I want to state that emphatically. Constructive, not opportunistic, but constructive criticism. Let me give an example of the difference between the two. Constructive criticism is make the PowerPoint with a bigger font so it can be seen better. As one brother did tell me, he watches it, not to get into someone's business, on the screen TV, the YouTube and so forth, but make it to where the font is bigger, as you may see, so it won't be, quote, so tiny. That is constructive criticism. People who tell you things like that actually care to actually hear what you have to say. You understand? If he or she didn't, they wouldn't sit there and take out the time to sit there and get into that with you. So respect those who respect you enough to even want to hear what you got to say. Respect your audience, for the lack of a better term. Don't sit there, brothers and sisters, and disrespect. You understand? These are things we care to point out for reference purposes. So that is a part of constructive criticism. Destructive is he or she who has enough time to try to sit down and watch a mistake and then harp on that particular mistake, brothers and sisters. That is destructive in that manner. A brother has written a certain amount of books. All right? 5 history books, 1 theological book, 6 Hebrew books. And in addition to that, 3 Hebrew books with my lady Sarai. My lady Sarai too has written a book. And why do I talk about that? Is not to talk business, but more so, brothers and sisters, to have it be known that things can be done. Don't let anyone tell you things cannot happen. You understand? My take, and this is my take, I must say in this point, regarding camps in my life, being 43, been in this understanding since a baby, is that some, not all, some, so I don't want to generalize because that's a natural disrespect. That's what we are victim to as black men, generalizations. Oh, Negroes is this, men is this, and so forth and so on. And I'm using the word Negro, keeping the language clean, because you know what's truly said, sadly. Right? It said the children of Israel journeyed and encamped, and they journeyed and they encamped, and they journeyed and they encamped. You understand? One of the things that the guy Elijah Muhammad had Malcolm do was to go around and spread different temples throughout the length and breadth of the United States. I was coming to the knowledge of Malcolm doing things in Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago. That right there was something that may not be known by everyone, brothers and sisters. So the amount of work, and no, I'm not a Muslim, the amount of work that one was putting in shows brothers and sisters. So you're going to have those who support. You're going to have those who don't support. Don't worry when you're presenting yourself before the Most High and to his people, they who do not support. That's not something that should be on your conscience and on your spirit. Because when you have the ability and moved by the Most High to do something, know and understand that it is the Most High that will move others to use you as a utensil. Just like a brother or sister is moved to do something, wherever it may be that's not bad, so will the Most High move the people toward what he understands and says is not bad. So I say that to say, don't worry about they who support, they who do not support, brothers and sisters. Sometimes you find it to where immediate family does not support, such as life. You understand. You may find those who are not immediate family that do support, such as life, brothers and sisters. So Chief Naphtali, may he rest in peace, told me something over 20 years ago in the congregation Shema Israel. He told me something when I was 20 years old. And the statement that he said then, now he's deceased, may he rest in peace, still resonates with me regarding teaching and presenting. He said, there are X amount of people that are around. You take the blessing that God's given you and you move with it. And I stood there and he stood there. And that tells me that he, being older than both my parents, may they all three rest in peace, my father, my mother, and Chief Naphtali, that he must have seen something in a young man to sit there and say, take whatever Elohim God has given you and move with it. That speaks volumes. So whatever it is, be you know how to paint, draw, sew, be you know how to sing, rhyme, or rap, if you will, be you into science, be you into the medicinal matter, whatever the Most High God has given you, take it. Don't use his gift that he's given to you in vain. Don't let the gift that the Most High God, whatever it may be, and you know what your gift and your talent is from the Creator, don't ever take God's name in vain by allowing he or she who has not reached his or her potential influence you to stop the work that the Most High God has given you. You should not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Lo tisa et shem ya Elohim kalashal. So if we know name in Hebrew is shame, also meaning fame, and we can be used to be utensils to make the Most High famous, we cannot take that in vain, brothers and sisters. Do you understand? These are things we're supposed to be bringing out to the people. This is not part of the lesson, but I'm going to ask the brother Yirmiyahu or so, right? If you're in the chat, please type in the portion, just the scripture, where the citation is. It's in Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 10, please. Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 10. Now, on this channel, Warrior Yeshiah History Lessons, we're going to do a presentation, Creator willing, tomorrow on what they call November 19th, regarding the history of Israel through Jeremiah's eyes. So we're going to be reading, thank you, my brother, in Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 10. And it says this. Cursed be he that doeth the work of the Lord deceitfully, and cursed be he that keepeth back his sword from blood. So even if you're in a warrior status, and you saying, I don't want to sit there and use my sword, that's a cursing thing. Whatever portion you have, if you have the spirit like Gideon or the spirit like Samson, that is what the Most High God has given you. You don't sit there and let that fall short. You don't sit there and what used to happen to me, being quote unquote disenchanted, like, oh man, people ain't watching. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. You can tell by the analytics that, quote, people are watching. Because when you look at your YouTube and it says over 15,000 people were viewing you in the past 20-something days, that means they were watching. But you as a presenter being watched by the Most High. So your goal is to make sure that while being watched by Yah, the creator of heaven and earth, that you are in a certain light and standard to be used by the Most High to have people to come to you. And again, the Most High doesn't give you anything that you cannot handle. So if you have, just say, a channel with 40,000 viewers and comments going left and right, how can they, who are the moderators, sit there and handle all of that? Time and place for everything. I found just this morning, by chance, and I mean just by chance, I found a whole stack, brothers and sisters, of notes that I thought I may have accidentally thrown out. I thought if I took it to the job, I'm looking at the job for the notes. I'm sitting up there tearing the closet up to try to find where in the world are these notes that I know I had just say last month. Now, brothers and sisters, while haphazardly just looking around, if you will, and so forth to so on, I want to show real quick, if I may, because I usually don't show the camera, right? If I may, real quick, this is what I found, brothers and sisters, for those who are able to see. Now, it may look jumbled up, but this is part of the notes that I use when I do my PowerPoints and presentations. These are notes within the notebook. Brothers and sisters, I know it looks jumbled up, but to me, I know what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for. I found this haphazardly. These things, brothers and sisters, have notes that date back to 1999, when I was still a teenager. Why do I say that in that particular case? The Most High will bring things to you when it's his time, and he's always on time. So while a brother is prepping up for more presentations, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and look this up online because I don't have these notes. Come to find out, I look underneath where the bed is at, tucked underneath there by accident, is all the notes. What is the point in that, brothers and sisters? And giving honor and praise unto the Most High is that don't be disenchanted, brothers and sisters. Don't sit back and think that things don't work, won't work, can't work, oh, it's done, that being the case, and so forth. Don't bring that kind of spirit into the Most High's understanding. All right? So, thank you all for helping, subscribing, sharing, and commenting. All right? To the brother who I see inside of the live on Facebook, Brother Yeshiah Yisrael. Shalom, my brother. How you doing? Peace and blessings to you as well. Now, let's get into the presentation. Who was given what by who? In that day, the Lord, Yah, made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So let's look. What is the river of Egypt, brothers and sisters? We already pointed out, we're going to show with the laser pointer, that Egypt definitely is in what you call Africa of today. All right. So now, is the land of Israel geographically in Africa, as pointed out last night? Yes, we can say such. We already went over who made up the term Middle East, and we're going to go over how the terms America, Africa, and Asia got its names. All right. So these are things we care to point out. So from this place here that you see shown with the laser pointer to the great river Euphrates, all that land was for Abraham and for his seed. That includes part of what we call modern day Asia and modern day Africa. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. All right. Moses from Egypt to Midian. Now, Midian, you see there, is inside of the place today called Saudi Arabia, which by default is in what you call what? The continent of Asia. So we have this highlighter. We want to show it with black ink, all right, for reference purposes. Midian being here, right? And you have Moses coming out of northeast Egypt over here. This way here shown is the way of the Philistines, and we're going to show that in a map. But instead of that way, we're going to show in a different color, right, if we will. Moshe or Moses went this way and went into the land of Midian in this particular case. So he went, if you were to look at it through a way of continent, he went from Africa to Asia by foot. Other people have done that as well. Why do we point this out? Because, brothers and sisters, to sit back and say that the land of Israel is in the Middle East, a term that's not 150 years old, when there have been people saying we are Israelites for over 150 years to this date, shows it to not be the case. We cannot use the term Middle East as a colloquial term in describing the lands that we're talking about. And this was pointed out on the channel last night. Brothers and sisters, subscribe to the channel. I'm asking you all to do. All right. So let's look in this particular matter. All right. And hopefully we can sit there and point out what we're talking about. Now, way to Arabia, as we see here. Land of Midian, as we see here, brothers and sisters. Right? Looking at it, if we will, here, the way of the Philistines. Now, as pointed out last night on the presentation, it goes to show that the land that we're talking about, Sinai, Egypt, Midian, the land of Israel, before that was known as the land of Canaan, right? That those lands cannot be what some people are saying in the lands of the West. You understand? Peru and Utah, one being in South America, one being in North America, is not where Jerusalem is, like some people have actually stated. And we could tell by the geography, that the Bible itself talks about by showing the way of the Philistines. Where is the way of the Philistines? You see that mentioned in the Bible in Shemot or Exodus chapter 13, when it says the Most High, when bringing Israel out of the land of Egypt, did not lead them through the way of the Philistines. The book of Amos, it says that the Most High brought the Philistines from Kaftor. Kaftor, the Kaftorim, are descendants of Mizraim, who are the Egyptians. So by default, the ancient Philistines were Egyptians genetically. But geography-wise, they went to another land. So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we can bring out for reference purposes. Now, when you go into the book of Chronicles, chapter 1 is where we see that. And we're going to go here, if we will, to let the book speak as you do its custom on the platform. Let's go to 1 Chronicles, please. 1 Chronicles chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 8. If the brother Yirmiyahu or so can type that part in, as he did earlier, if you're listening still, I thank you, I appreciate it. 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 8. The sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, Put and Canaan, and the sons of Cush, Seba and Hawilah, and Sabta and Ra'ama, and Sabteka, and the sons of Ra'ama, Sheba and Dedan. And Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. And Mizraim begot Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehubim, and Naphtuchim, and Pakrusim, and Kasluhim, which came forth the Philistines, and Kaftorim. And Canaan begot Zadon, his firstborn, in Heth, and the Jebusite also, and the Amorite, and the Girgashites, the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hamathite. So, brothers and sisters, the book of Genesis chapter 10 gets a little bit more in depth, saying that these are where the nations divided in their lands. Last night we went over Genesis 10, showing where the land of Canaan was. Now, Leviticus chapter 18, it distinctly says the land of Canaan, O children of Israel, where I am bringing you to. So in light of all of that, and knowing that the Hamites are the progenitors of the Canaanites, by default, Canaanites are Hamites. How then can we not think that Hamites did not live in what some people call Asia of today? All right. So these are things we care to point out. The brother typed in, said, I'm happy to hear this lesson because a lot of people are beginning to say that we are ready and home And Jerusalem is in Utah. Jerusalem is not in Utah, brothers and sisters, in that case. All right. And so there's a lot of questions, especially that have to be asked, or some questions I may say that have to be asked. Not getting sidebar, and I appreciate the comment, my brother Yeshiah Yisrael. And that's this. How do we define and show about the water? Where is the great sea that the book of Numbers 34 in the book of Daniel chapter 7 talks about? Where's the way of the Philistines that Exodus chapter 13 talks about? Where, brothers and sisters, is the Jordan River that Joshua chapter 3 talks about? Where is the Sea of Kinneret or the Sea of Galilee that Isaiah chapter 9 talks about? See, these are things we're pointing out. Once you start dealing with the matter of waters, seas, rivers, lakes, and so forth and so on, that shows where the land of Israel is. And it shows you the names of the lands and so forth and so on. And brothers and sisters, believe it or not, they're deceased now, but may they rest in peace. I'm not going to mention their names out of respect to their families, because I know how it is losing someone, and that can be sensitive. But these two elders living in New York City said one time this statement, that they were in the Bronx. I'm going to at least disclose that, in New York, right? And they said they approached some people who were vendors or selling things. And they said to them, oh, hey, good evening, how you doing? Salam or whatever, thinking that they were Ishmael or Muslims in doctrine, should I say, in Ishmael and nationality. And the guy said to the two elders, said, we are not Ishmael. We are the people of Joktan. We know who you're talking about, but we're not Ishmael. We are Joktan, their relative. This is in New York City, brothers and sisters. People were in New York City saying that they come from the line of Joktan that you do see in the book of Genesis. Among the people in Ghana, which is in Western Africa, there is a group of people that say they come from, geography-wise, the Sinai and the land of Israel. In the book that I wrote, Egypt Talking Writing, there's a short interview with a guy that's from the Ga people that live in Togo, West Africa. Ga, G-A. He stated very, very bluntly that his people come from Israel. I wish I could have had it recorded. He said that at a job, actually at the job where I'm at, there's a guy that came in there and he said, I am from Nigeria. And I said, oh, okay, look, you Ibio, Ibibio, Ewe, Igbo, Yoruba. He said, Igbo, Niger Jews. And I just sat there and just was like, Niger, I'm in uniform. You understand? I didn't have on my wrap and fringes and so forth and so on. But that's what the guy said. He said that his people, the Igbo, that in Nigeria are the Jews that you read of in the scriptures. I just sat there like, oh, okay. Sometimes being silent, being able to allow you to speak later on certain subjects. You understand? So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to point out for reference purposes. Only people saying that the land of Israel is in the West are people who are in the West. The Bible doesn't say it. Geography shows it to not be the case. Other groups of people throughout the length and breadth of the earth that lay claim to being of the children of Israel, they do not say it. You understand? I remember speaking to somebody, not getting sidetracked, but talking on the subject. Thank you all for the time. You got to respect the people who respect you. That's why I always say thank you for the time. Right? Brother, how can you say that the land of Israel is here in the West and explain Deuteronomy 28, verse 68? That was asked in 2005. 18 years ago. I was 25 at the time. And I mean no disrespect, I haven't gotten an answer yet. And that was 15 years ago. No, pardon me. 2005, I was 25. That's 18 years ago, I must say, sorry. 18 years ago, I asked that question to somebody who was saying, as an Israelite, that the land of Israel is here in the West. How do you explain, and the Lord shall send you back into Egypt in ships? How can that possibly be expounded upon? And I was told that they're working on it. And I said, oh, okay. It's one of those things, not to sound arrogant. I'll wait. And I've been waiting. My daughter was born in 2006. She's 17 now. And soon will be going on, say, into college. And I'm still waiting the whole length of my child's life, plus some months, for the answer on how Deuteronomy 28, verse 68 is explained in that case. And something tells me that I'm going to keep on waiting, because there's no way to explain Hebraically, geographically, prophetically, or otherwise that the land of Israel is over here. The book of Ezekiel, when I say over here, I mean in the West. The book of Ezekiel says that the nations wanted the land of Israel for themselves, namely Edom and the nations round about. So as we pointed out, brothers and sisters, on this platform, the nations round about that wanted the land of Israel are part of the people that you see fighting over there regarding the land of Israel today. There's nobody going to war in America saying they want America, outside of some people saying they're Moors indigenous to this land on YouTube or whatever. That's not war. That's a presentation for views, likes, and comments. You understand? To the brothers and sisters who say, while they're saying that we are not the children of Israel, that this land belongs to you, you can have it, and everything that comes with it. The dry season, the snow that comes in New York sometimes in April, the floods that you see in the mudslides, and the wildfires that come along with this place, and all of the politics that go along in this particular matter. Not to sound disrespectful, you can have that. Our people in slavery were singing, "Give me Canaan land." They knew that this was not their land here in the West. In the book that a brother wrote called Israelite History as it relates to the world, I pointed out that there were women in the 1930s being interviewed, and two of them stated that their grandparents were, quote, kidnapped out of Africa. In the 1930s, women who were born in slavery in North Carolina testified that their grandparents were kidnapped out of Africa and brought over here. So that kind of eliminates the concept and the ideology saying that, oh, well, we were never here, or pardon me, that we were here and never from somewhere else. Because when you're saying we are indigenous to, say, this West like that, you're going to have to sit back and explain several things. Now, I'm not saying that there were no black people here before the Atlantic slave trade in the United States of today. I am not saying that. What I am saying is to minimalize what happened with us as a people in the name of saying we can get reparations, you're playing the double fence. You can't say that we were not brought over as captives and treated horribly in slavery, then turn around and say, well, we want reparations for slavery. When the mother of Freddie Gray in Maryland took the money from the city of Baltimore regarding the death of her son by the police, you no longer have a case. You no longer have a case once you accepted that money. So once we begin to sit back and think we can get reparations money, anything that is due to us by the hands of the Most High, we're saying that we don't deserve it. We're saying we don't deserve a language, we don't deserve our own land, we don't deserve our own culture, we don't deserve our own flag, for the lack of a better term. You gave all that up to have Washington on a dollar bill in your pocket. Washington, who used to take black people's teeth and use it as his own. You gave it up for Lincoln in your pocket. Lincoln, who used to sit there and fire the people who freed black people like Fremont. There was a guy named Fremont, I'm going to type his name in there. Lincoln fired this guy and put black people back in slavery in 1862, 1863. That's what you're fighting for, brothers and sisters. Got Hamilton in the pocket, who was an associate of they during the slave trade. Got Jackson on the 20, who enslaved his own children, if you will. Got Franklin on the 100. Grant on the 50. Both of them encouraged slavery because Grant himself had slaves, even though he was the general for the Union Army. So, brothers and sisters, our reparations will not come through their currency, if you will. Our reparations is already prophesied that they will bring us back to our land. Isaiah chapter 60 talks about such. So we don't need, as far as being the house of Israel, knowing your land is in the land of the east, knowing that your culture is the Torah, and knowing that your language is Hebrew. Brothers and sisters, no. It's one thing to say money is a defense, like Solomon said, in this society. It's one thing to sit there and say, I'm going to go and get a job or a career. I'm going to become an entrepreneur and so forth. But it's a whole other thing when you're willing to say your people didn't go through getting hung upside down with the baby being cut out, just so you can sit there and say, I'm part of this indigenous people and I can sit there and get reparations, while playing one side of the fence of being a victim, and this is not to try to use the term loosely, while at the same token saying we were also, quote, indigenous here. What is your language then in that particular case? You understand? There's a record from Oluda Equiano. There's a record from Mamua Fakwa. You can look that up in a book that I wrote, From Assyria to America. One being brought to the United States after being brought to the West Indies, and one being brought to Brazil. One in the 1700s, one in the 1800s, during the slave trade, and they wrote an account of such. There's a record from Alexander Falconbridge, who spoke about the kidnapping that happened to the people, and he was said to be a, quote, doctor on a slave ship. So there are different references that get into this. And one of the things, not to get sidetracked, but I want to state this, that I asked concerning, well, we were never put in slave ships and we were never brought over here. How do you explain the Dublin Act of 1788? I'm going to actually ask somebody that. Didn't get an answer yet. I guess I'll be waiting for that too. Of 1788. Dublin Act 1788. Do you know what that is? I'm going to type it inside of the Facebook thing as well. Dublin Act 1788. That is the British telling the other Europeans on how the slave ship should be, how many people to use, how compact it should be, and so forth and so on. They had an act that was enacted by the British in 1788 concerning the slave ships matter. this is 11 to 12 years, depending upon what month, after the United States was created. Did you know that the Lord Ligonier slave ship that is said to bring Kunta over to the United States actually is documented in history? That there was an actual slave ship called Lord Ligonier in that particular case? See, these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to sit there and bring out for reference purposes. Now, getting back into the presentation we see here with the time allotted, thank you for that. The way of the Philistines, the way of Shur, the way to Arabia. You see that they didn't have to, without there being the Suez Canal of today, to go over and cross that in that particular manner. You understand? We pointed out about the land of Midian. In the presentation, I'm going to put it inside the description. It's called Jethro. I'm going to put it inside the description when this is uploaded on the channel. And in that portion, there is an actual mountain that shows the top of it being blackened as if it was burnt. That's the only mountain in the world like that, and that's in modern day Saudi Arabia. Only mountain in the world like that. And the book of Exodus says that the whole mountain quaked greatly and the top of it was burnt because Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh descended upon it. We're talking about the work of the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. This is something we care to bring out for reference purposes. Let's continue, if we will. All right. Where are the lands, according to sources, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to take refuge in the stronghold of Pharaoh, and to take shelter in the shadow of Egypt? In the shadow of Egypt, Israel felt, well, going into Egypt, that'll sit there and make us feel okay, you know? We ain't got to worry about this people bothering and that people bothering. Now, this, of course, is after the Exodus. Therefore shall the stronghold of Pharaoh turn to your shame, and the shelter in the shadow of Egypt to your confusion. Isaiah chapter 30. That walk to go down into Egypt. So, brothers and sisters, the land of Egypt is, as we're going to point out, south, or more so you may say southwest of the land of Israel. So if it says they walk to go down into Egypt, not being funny, it didn't say that they had to use a ship to go from where they was at in Israel to Egypt. They walked down in that case. For those who subscribe to the book of Yeshiah, I'm going to type that inside of here, if we will. Right? It says in the book of Yeshiah that Naphtali, when they found out that Joseph was alive, that he went and told Jacob their father in great speed. This leads some to say, when it says Naphtali is a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. If that be the case, brothers and sisters, and from what I read in the portions of Yeshiah does not contradict keeping the Torah, so I do uphold it. Right? They walk to go down into Egypt. Eastward, the country is bounded by Arabia. To the south lies Egypt. On the west are the Phoenician and Mediterranean, meaning the Phoenician and Mediterranean seas. Northward, it commands an extensive prospect over Syria. Source, Tacitus, Roman emperor. Tacitus, the Roman emperor who spoke about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD or so, he said geographically that the country, Israel, all right, as he quoted the country of the Jews or the land of the Hebrews, he actually stated that inside of his book, Tacitus History's book 5, for those who reference, Eastward, the country is bounded by Arabia. We shown that. To the south lies Egypt. So if they're walking down in Isaiah chapter 30, we can see why a later historian would say, what? South lies Egypt. So we go down, like I'm in New York. If we go to Georgia, we mostly say, I'm going, quote, down south. You understand? People who are in Georgia who go, say, to New York, say they're going, quote, oh, they're going up north. Not to be funny, in New York, when we say going up north, it's talking about going to prison. In most cases, no disrespect intended. You understand? So these are just things, brothers and sisters, we care to bring out for reference purposes. Therefore, behold, I am against thee and against thy rivers, and I will make the land of Egypt utterly waste and desolate, from Migdol to Syene, even unto the border of Ethiopia. What are we pointing out, brothers and sisters, in that particular case? Is this in Ezekiel 29, those lands people did travel to and through. It said that the Queen of Sheba went to see Solomon. It talks about the ships from Ezion-Geber in the book of 1 Kings chapter 10. So these things, brothers and sisters, is not hard to figure out what landmass we're talking about. The ancient nations didn't say, hey, I'm in a different continent than you. That wasn't the particular case with that. Because what is called Asia today, as what is called the Middle East today, as what is called Africa today, did not exist as terminologies in the days that we're talking about, even in the era of Tacitus, per se, even in the era of Isaiah, even in the era after Isaiah in the timing of Ezekiel. So we can't sit back and say Israel, the land, could never be said to be, in today's terminology, Asia and or Africa. It could be, as we pointed out with the tectonic plates last night, both. Let's go on, brothers and sisters, in this manner. Now let's look. I ask you if you care to take a screenshot of this. Asia and Africa and America. Asia is a female Greek name meaning resurrection or sunrise. The Romans had given the name Africa to the continent. America is named after Amerigo Vespucci. Oriental, like they say, oh, the Orientals, come from the Latin word meaning east. Trinidad comes from the Spanish word meaning Trinity. Barbados comes from the Portuguese word meaning beard. India, the terminology, comes from the Greek historian Herodotus. Before that, what is referred to as India, which included Pakistan, correct me if I'm wrong, was called Punjab. Let's go on. Their inward thought is that their houses should continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Their inward thought is their houses, meaning of their families, that which they established, right? Like the house of such and such, shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. So it's not hard to figure out, reading from Psalm 49, about how the imperialists, the colonists, if you will, as well, name lands according to their own names. So we cannot take the ancient name Yisrael, which was applied to the land after the people of Canaan were there, and then associate it with such. You understand? We cannot respectfully do that. We cannot, in history, biblically say that Hamites were only in continental Africa and Shemites was only in continental Asia. That is not the case. You had, brothers and sisters, the Medo-Persian Empire. The Medes we pointed out in a presentation, subscribe to the channel, called Greece in the Bible, that the Medes come from the line of Japheth through Madai. So the majority of Japheth, yes, is in Europe, but that doesn't mean that they also was not in what you call Asia as well. The majority of Hamites, yes, was in continental Africa in history, but that doesn't mean that Nimrod, a Hamite, did not have an establishment society and kingdom in what we call modern day Iraq, which is by geographical terms in Asia. So these are things we care to point out for reference purposes. All right. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. This fourth kingdom, Daniel chapter 7 speaking of, is of the Romans. It says what about imperialists? That they named the lands after their own names in Psalms 49, letting the book speak, right? Then it says in Daniel concerning the Romans, it says, shall be diverse or different from all the kingdoms, it shall devour the whole earth. It shall tread it down, tread the earth down, and break it in pieces. So they got this strip of land and they named it after their names there. They got that strip of land and named it after their names there. And brothers and sisters, we cannot associate again the ancient name of Yisrael according to the geography solely by today's terminologies after the Romans did what they did. After they did what they did with the Suez Canal, much after the decline of the Roman Empire. Do you know the people, as we pointed out, called the Greeks, did not call themselves Greeks? They called themselves the Hellenes. The Romans called them Grecos, which in the English, the anglicized form word will be then what? Greek. Did you know that in the 1930s and in the 1920s, you might have a fist fight for calling a man or woman of color black? You really use the terminology pretty popular now. But I remember my first teacher, Maury Yosef, may he rest in peace. He was saying in his day, if you call somebody, hey, you black, that was fighting words. You know how you see SmackDown or World Star when somebody uses the N-word and there's a fight? I guess it'll be that kind of thing. You had a fight on your hands a little, say 100 years ago, calling somebody black. But that's become popular now. But we know that's the terminology. That's not truly our name. So we can't say, and I spoke with my brother Yirmiyahu concerning this, and he enlightened me to something that this is a topic to talk about because some people get, if I'm not misquoting the brother, let me know if I am, if you're still in the presentation, and that is, some people speak confusion and being confused because they associate color as a land mass and so forth and so on, and you can't always do that. You understand? Not all, for the lack of a better term, black people are a monolithic people. The teaching that came, correct me if I'm wrong, from John Henry Clark and others was basically saying that all Africa was one big black place, and then the enemies came from Asia and Europe. No, Africa had wars long before that. We Israel. It said the house of Rehoboam and Jeroboam stayed having problems. The ancient Egyptians in their writings were known for cutting off the right hand of their enemies. They did that to Cushites. Did you know, brothers and sisters, that the pharaohs of Dynasty 4, not to get sidetracked, praised themselves on capturing the Ethiopians? All of Africa was not one big monolithic or united place, and this is not to sound like a coon or anything like that. If anything, you take the human glory away from Kemet, Mizraim, or Samatawi, you take the human glory away from Nubia, Kush, or Ethiopia by just saying, oh, they're all black. So there's nothing unique about Nubia. There's nothing unique about the Nok people. There's nothing unique about the people of Samatawi. There's nothing unique about the people of Matani, or Akkad, or Philistia, or Canaan, or the other people that Merneptah spoke about in the Stella. All those nations being what you call people of color, who he said, maybe lying, maybe embellishing, that they were his enemies. You understand? Some black people in consciousness, and this is no disrespect intended in saying this, will have you to think that African wars was just a little skirmish that happened. No, it was not. Brothers and sisters, dumb nations, when they went to war, they went to war. The book of Chronicles teaches us that Zerah of the Ethiopians came against the people of Judah with 1 million people. They didn't come light-handed in war. The British found that out with the Zulus in the 19th century. Did you know that the British said in the 19th century that the Zulus were their most hardest opponents? Did you know that, brothers and sisters? If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, please, I'm asking. Please type in the number 4 as we get into this, giving glory unto the Most High. Did you know that the British stated that the Zulu people in Southern Africa were some of the hardest enemies for them to have to deal with? They said it. And do you know what else? Brothers and sisters, thank you for typing that in. The Romans said the Hebrews were the hardest enemies that they ever had to fight against. Yeah, they said that. How did they do what we talk about often, 70 AD with the temple? They went underground in Jerusalem and burnt the temple from underneath. Since the era of the timing of the Romans with the emperors after Pompey, then you eventually had Julius Caesar. Then eventually you had Augustus. Then you eventually had Tiberius. Then you eventually had Caligula. Sorry, sidebar. I got 3 sisters. No Caligula. I think my sisters are pretty, but there's nothing that I find an attraction. That is sick. Then after Caligula, you had Claudius, a great leader to the Romans. Then you had Nero. No Nero, sidebar. You did matricide after you slept with your mother, Agrippina. You're sick. Then you committed suicide. So then eventually you get to Vespasian. Then Titus, then Domitian. Right? Did you know, brothers and sisters, since the era of the Romans before Titus, the Israelites would throw boulders down and attack the people of Rome from the temple top and from the rooftops? So the Romans had to come with the catapult kind of thing, because you could not, according to Mary Smallwood, in her book called The Jews Under Roman Rule, it said that during the era of Nero of Rome, you know, the one who they said was singing when Rome was burning down, that emperor, it said, and quote, that the fist fights were common, where the, quote, Jews had the upper hand. And this is not to, quote, unquote, talk about violence and so forth. I have seen in the Bronx, I have seen in Brooklyn, I have seen in Queens, when brothers using no weapons but their hands. Those kind of fist fights are not pretty. We're talking about people like Jack Johnson, 10 rounds and more and fighting and so forth and so on. You do not want to challenge the average one, so-called black male, in a quote fist fight. In that particular case, and the Romans found that out, and that's pointed out by historians, that fist fights between the Romans and they of Judah were common, where the quote Jews, which we know is of Judah, had the quote upper hand. So what are we pointing out? Read about the Romans and the Israelites. Not playing salesman, but there's a portion of that in a book that a brother wrote from Assyria to America for those who are interested. Poqueto, Shabbat Shalom, my brother Yared. Shabbat Shalom, Dorayahu Ben Dora. Thank you for joining into the chat. The brother Yeshiah Yisrael stated in a Facebook Live, I remember the knuckle up fist fights. An elder, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to mention his name because I take him as a counselor, even in my relationship, not to get too personal. My relationship with my lady, I ask people who've been married for over 30 years, and this man here is Chief Elkanah from the congregation DCB. I give him much respect. He did a live on there not too long ago. For those subscribed to the channel, DCB, watch it. There's good information on it. It doesn't make you any less of a moray to subscribe to somebody else's channel. You see, that's showing love to your brothers and sisters. Not, I'm not going to say nothing because I worry about less people watching me. No, 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 no. Again, if the Most High is leading you, the Most High will bring the people that he's going to use you to be bringing him to. Glory to Yah. Don't worry about who's watching because Yah is watching. I just told y'all earlier a whole stack of notes that I got to use for my next presentations. That was a worry on my mind. Like, did I throw it out by accident and clean it up and everything like that? My gosh. Come to find out, it was tucked underneath the bed. All you got to do is look better, search. That's one of the jokes that women say about us as men. Oh, I don't see it. Did you really, really look? There's a sister on Facebook showing a husband with blindfold on talking about, I can't see. I'm not trying to mock blind people, but that's what women say about us as males generally, that we don't really look for things and search for things hard and so forth. But getting back, if we will, to the point. Chief Elkanah from out of DCB told me this. In the 1970s, they would walk down the street and would take their hands and put it over their face or down the block. And that's supposed to mean, do you want to fight that person? And if you keep your hands down, that tells the other person you don't want to fight. So there were people, according to Chief Elkanah, in so many words, looking just to fight people. And the quote or the hand signal was to have your hand in a fist and throw it up in front of your own face, and that will be the signal to let the other person know whether or not you're ready to, quote, as the brother put in there, knuckle up. You didn't want to contest the sons of Levi and the sons of Levi and the sons of Judah, O Rome. You did not want to do that. You got into the temple by going underground. What does this say about the Romans? Devour the earth and break it in pieces and shred it down. You went under the earth to get into that. Josephus points that out. You cannot sit there and step up to that. They had a reason why they was fighting for that land. And we know, brothers and sisters, that fighting for America, my dad was in Vietnam, my grandfather in World War II. No. America does not do right by their soldiers. Anyone in the military, America does not do right by their soldiers. My father, no disrespect intended, went into the military like many black men did because of some of the situations going on, no disrespect intended, at home. And I don't say that about my father or my father's side of the family to shame anyone. Black men did not go into Vietnam because they felt love for the country. They just didn't like what they were seeing in some of the stuff at home and in the hood. That's the truth for those who do know about that particular matter. So brothers and sisters, getting back, if we will, into this particular thing right here, right? The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. Sidebar, while we talk about that. Did you know that's how Rome fell? How you fighting the Gauls, or you fighting the Visigoths in the Roman Empire and so on for 9 months, and then you go back home and your wife is 7 months pregnant because the Roman senator was sleeping with your wife when he sent you out to war. So by the time the matter of Alaric in the Roman Empire, in the matter, say, of the 4th century AD, pardon me, the 5th century AD, no, they stopped fighting for Rome, and that's how Rome got trampled, because they didn't see the necessary to fight for Rome when the Roman people was sleeping with their wives while they was being gun-ho for such. In that particular case, same thing say in the United States. The little horn that came up, which I personally teach in the book of Daniel, the little horn that came up out of the 10 horns and put down 3 horns, I teach is America in that particular case. And the 3 horns that it put down, I'm going to do a lesson upon this one time, is England, Spain, and France. And now they got their own thing established in the United States. There's little horn that made war with the saints of the Most High and prevailed against the people of the Most High. You understand? let's not get too sidetracked, and I hope I'm not. And I appreciate the people with the comments, be it the Facebook Live, share it. It's appreciated. Share the video, comment, like, and share. But these kind of subjects lead into other kind of discussions, but we do not want to get way off course of what we're talking about and so forth. So hopefully people took a screenshot of this and you can care to look this information up yourself. Let's go on, if we will, brothers and sisters. Notes on them of the ancient world. Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Jeremiah, Jeroboam, Uriah, all went to Egypt. By foot, by camel, by horse. Not necessarily by boat. You know who Uriah is? That we see right here mentioned. I just put this in a highlight. Do you know who that Uriah is, brothers and sisters? Anybody in the chat? Be it the Facebook Live or be it the chat here on Mori Yeshiah History Lessons. Thank you all. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. Who's Uriah in there? Anybody can type it in? Thank you. I'm going to say this. This is not Uriah in the time of David. All right? This Uriah that we see right here, brothers and sisters, is Uriah during the time of Jeremiah. He went to Egypt to escape King Jehoiakim of Judah. What does King Jehoiakim of Judah do? Send his men out to bring Uriah out from Egypt and then had Uriah assassinated. In New York in the 1980s, it was common when you get into problems with people to go to Virginia. A lot of people in Virginia from the 1980s come out of New York because they were escaping certain problems and situations that they had in New York. Shalom, my brother. Yes, the prophet Uriah. Shalom, warrior of Yisrael. So Israel, in part, found going to Egypt as a way to escape some of the problems even with Israelites. King David dealt with Egyptians under the name of the Philistines, as we pointed out, the Philistines bred from the Egyptians. And Jeroboam, did you know, the first king of the northern tribes after the division, he went to Egypt. Do you know why Jeroboam went to Egypt? He went to Egypt, brothers and sisters, to escape Solomon. So you had Jeroboam in the land of Israel going to Egypt to escape Solomon, like you had Uriah going to Egypt to escape King Jehoiakim. Egypt was a place that the Israelites, after the Exodus, went to when they wanted to find secure. So when you go in the book of Maccabees, and it said that when the Greeks came, that the Israelites went for anywhere for a matter of succor in order to feel safe and so forth and so on. And first Maccabees, don't be surprised, and second Maccabees, when it said to all those of Judah that be in Egypt. The diaspora went in part to Egypt, not to England. So the guy who wrote the book, The Black Man in the Old Testament, back saying in the 1990s, that said we only see the white descendants of Israel because they went into France and into England. Not so was the case. This does not say that there were not Israelites traveling, as we pointed out, even to England, even to Spain, even to France, even to Italy. Because Solomon had Israelites going over to Tarshish, which is Spain. We pointed this out in the book of Kings. So we let the book be the main topic, not, don't take this the wrong way, as a black man, color. Because if you just go by, quote, black, which is part of what the thesis of this presentation is about, then you'll never understand Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Chaldea, Ur Chaldea, Mitanni, Akkad, Suma, Egypt, Kemet, Samatawi, Nubia, Cush, Dunok, the people of Philistia, Mitanni, Akkad, Assyria, etc., etc. The individual matters of these different nations who happen to be of a particular hue or a particular color, which is something that we're born with. That's not something for us as quote black people to have to praise. That's something the Most High God gave us. Take it, use it for what you can, because believe you me, as my lady pointed out to me just yesterday, they are taking melanin and putting it inside of machines because of the power that melanin has. So it's something that we already came with. Our unity must be based upon being righteous. Why do you find people who are said to be, quote, conscious that say, you know what, for the lack of a better term, we don't like the white man? Is it because he's pale? It's not because his skin peels in the sun. It's not because, like Malcolm said, and this is no knock on Malcolm if you're hearing what a brother's saying carefully, our skin is gold compared to this. Do you know that the Spanish used to take black people's captives, used to call us black gold? So if we already have this gold within us, that's not something that we have to use as a catalyst. Our catalyst, and this is to cite Martin Luther King, is by the content of one's character. How does one move? That is what is important in that particular case. If you're saying that, quote, black is the essence of all colors of the spectrum within it, then take that same spirit, take that same ideology, take that same understanding, and give all your heart to your own people. Don't half step like Big Daddy Kane, the rapper, talked about. Ain't no half stepping. Don't sit there and give 50% when you can give 100. Don't sit there and give 100% when you can give 110. Go out of your way for your brothers and sisters. Look out for your elders. That is the thing that people are talking about. As far as character building, you understand? We already, as pointed out, were born with the complexions we have. So we already have that within us. So when do we grow from understanding that to working on the spirit or the character of a matter? That is something that we all must sit there and have, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. Thutmose the first, Thutmose the third, Seti the first, Ramses the second, Necho the second, all went to Canaan. Do you know the land of Israel in ancient times was called the land of Canaan? Have you ever heard of this word before? And I'm going to type it in the Facebook Live as well. Doretenu? No, retenu. Stop trying to autocorrect me. Retenu. That is the Egyptian term for the area that geography today calls the Levant, which is where the land of Israel is. You can look that up and take that to the bank, as the saying goes. I try to, brothers and sisters, giving glory to the Most High in these kind of presentations to come collegiate. That is to say, of college, references and sources and understandings and connections and things of that kind of nature. You know who I too on the earth give reverence to in that particular case? May she rest in peace. I'm going to say her name. Hopefully I'm okay and the relatives will understand where I'm coming from and honoring it. She was an elder to my mother, old enough to be my grandmother. May she rest in peace. Was Imam Matina. When I was a child, a teenager, she told me about studying to try to get into every little source of information that you sit there and can. Don't turn down any way or any source of information once it comes down to it. So you can find a brother citing a magazine. You can find a brother citing an encyclopedia. You can find a brother citing a dictionary. You can find a brother sitting up there citing the scriptures. You can find a brother citing up there different references, because when you have the courage of a lion, not the arrogancy of a coward. Understand, arrogancy is for cowards. When you have, however, the courage of a lion, you don't have no problem going into that. You understand? One can read the Code of Hammurabi and not sit back and think this is where Moses got it from. Yeah, no, that's not where Moses got it from. Moses got it from the Most High, because the Code of Hammurabi and the laws of the Torah are different. And to bring it to real life, if we will, this is not to shame myself. The first time, which should have been a never time or a no time, or definitely should have been the last time, if not that I stole something. I was 4 years old. Little, big 3, baby 5, however you want to put it. I was 4 years old. I saw $10 inside of a drawer. And I looked, and I mentioned this inside of my book, Egypt Talking Writing. And I looked, okay, there's nobody looking. I'm going to go back, but make sure I close the drawer first. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to sit there and take this money. My mother didn't trust the matter with bank cards, obviously with me at 4, and my sister being, say, X amount of years older than myself, not to get too personal about my sister, right? Just don't want to expose her age in that particular manner on this platform. So my mother said, go over there and get my money. I was like, uh-oh. See, I already knew I took it. I stole it. You understand? But if I were to read at that age, S-T-E-E-L, I wouldn't know the difference between that steal and S-T-E-A-L. Yet I knew, knowing Torah, it says the Lord is already within you. I already knew I shouldn't do this. So I'm going to sit there and try to sneak, and make sure I close the drawer, and I'm going to look around the corner in the hallway. Nobody's there. All right, let me go and take this, put it in my pocket. Let me put it deep in my pocket. Eventually it came out what happened. Son, come here. Let me look in your pockets, and sure enough, that's where it was. I got in trouble. You understand? Verbally, should I say, in that particular way. This is not the way on how to do things. You ask for things if you want it, and so forth. Now, don't miss the bus. We're going to go out there, and we're going to sit there and take you to school. I remember that day like yesterday. You understand? And so I'm saying that to say this. If you have that courage in that heart, in the Torah, not that anyone is perfect, is already within you. You don't have to worry about reading something or finding out about something that you feel might upset your understanding. You understand what I mean? Once it comes down, say, into that particular case. The prophets that we read of, such as Jeremiah, they walked right into where the people's worshiping idols. Don't do this. You understand? So let's look. Alexander III of Macedon, also known as Alexander the Great, and Titus of Rome went through Canaan to get to Egypt. This is all, brothers and sisters, we want to go back, if we will, from the presentation that did happen last night, right? For those who, right? This is all before this thing here called the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal was built in the 1800s, all right? So let's look. We're going to show with the pen what we're talking about. And we went over these notes last night. All right. If you're interested, you can check it out on the platform and channel, Mari Yeshiah History Lessons. That area there is the Suez Canal. Right? That did not exist. Brothers and sisters, in the time frame of the peoples we just mentioned. So let's go back to where we were just reading, right? Thank you for that, brothers and sisters. And what do we see? That people traveled, be they Shemite, Hamite, or Japhite, Alexander being from Japhet, Titus being from Japhet, Thutmose the first, the third, Seti the first, Ramses the second, Necho were all Hamitic people. Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Jeremiah, Jeroboam, Uriah were all Shemitic people. So you got Shem, Ham, and Japhet going into that particular land, back and forth, and able to do so because there was, brothers and sisters, no Suez Canal. We went over the notes concerning the Suez Canal last night. Let's continue on with the time allotted. Thank you. I generally try not to go over an hour, but I see I did. But we're going to continue in the same vein, hoping and praying that everybody is well and will be better. All right? I'm asking you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Now, why do I try? And I say try because I know I could speak. All right? Try not to go over an hour. And it's no disrespect intended to people. In part, it's because of attention span. Sometimes if I see a video I might be interested in that's 3 hours, I'll put it in watch later, may never watch it. So I try, brothers and sisters, in respecting people and treating people the way you want to be treated, I try not to go past a certain length of time, all right, in that particular case. But nonetheless, with the time allotted, giving honor and praise unto Yah, Shabbat peace to everybody here, Shabbat sas to everybody here, hoping and praying everybody as well, and will be better. Let's read what the Tanakh in the scriptures itself says. Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy origin and thy nativity is of the land of the Canaanites. The Amorite was thy father, and thy mother was a Hittite. That's Ezekiel 16. You know what that's talking about? That, brothers and sisters, is talking about the land itself and who the inhabitants in their word, we can say in today's understanding, are Hamites. Let's go on. The names of them were Aholah, the elder, and Aholibah, her sister, and they became mine. And they bore sons and daughters. And as for their names, Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem is Aholibah. Girded with girdles upon their loins, with pendant turbans upon their heads, all of them captains to look upon, the likeness of the sons of Babylon, even of Chaldea, the land of their nativity. It says that Samaria and Jerusalem, the people now, the land of their nativity is of Chaldea, which is by default in what you will call continental Asia. But do you know, brothers and sisters, the Babylonian Empire was started by Hamitic nations in continental Asia. That's why it doesn't make much sense to try to say Africa and Asia in that particular case, because we already went over the names of how those lands were named as and by and whom and when. Just as much as it was called Palestine after the matter of Hadrian calling it. So when you read in history books or books on history that say the Palestinians, you got to understand what concept they're talking about. When they talk about brothers and sisters, whoever heard of this? Amu. Whoever heard of the Amu, can you type in, brothers and sisters, the number 2? Amu. You ever heard that term before? In history or anything of that kind of nature? Amu is the Egyptian term for this here. Thank you for that, my brother. Asiatic. And I'm going to type it inside of this as well. Glad to be able to get it in a Facebook Live as well. Asiatic, brothers and sisters. Do you know that there were Hamites that were part of the Amu? Did you know that the people called the Hyksos in history didn't call themselves Hyksos? That they were called Hyksos in Greek transliteration from the Egyptian term Hekakasu, Ahakusoswet, meaning rulers of mountainous regions. Some people say rulers of foreign regions. But the actual identity of the people called Hyksos were both Hamitic and Shemitic. Did you know that? So these are things, brothers and sisters, we care to point out again for reference purposes. Ancient nations that we are speaking about from Ezekiel and even before then did not call a whole landmass Africa. They did not call a whole landmass Asia. They named their cities, their towns, their villages, and their suburbs. They named their countries and their tribes. Ancient nations of antiquity, correct me if I'm wrong, were not into naming whole continent lands like the modern man does. We pointed out through the tectonic plates last night in the presentation that what we understand and call in history Canaan, later on Israel, later on Palestine, can be said to be in today's terminology either in Asia and or Africa. We showed that last night for those who are interested with the maps, with geography, with names and so forth. So, sidebar, the hatred of Africa, that's not on this channel. See, and I hate to have to, and I won't do it because I hate to do it. Some brothers or sisters, like you got somebody from the One West camps or whatever. Oh, I ain't feeding no African. You played yourself saying that. You disrespected yourself saying that. That you're not, quote, feeding no African. Because your ancestor, my brother from ISUPK, no disrespect to call anyone out, Joseph fed Hamitic nations. So how are we claiming to be in part the children of Joseph, regardless of whatever chart one want to use, and not follow in the good steps of Daddy Joseph, Abba Yosef, Patriarch Yosef? What book are you reading, brothers and sisters? Let's go on. They in Egypt in the 12th dynasty. This is in the tomb of Kemun Hotep. Grain is being weighed. Why does that become important? Grain was used in currency in ancient Egypt. Food's important. Let's continue, family. Be not ignorant of anything, in a great matter or a small. Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha 5, verse 15. There were many immigrants from Palestine, apparently peaceful arrivals, who were absorbed in the lowest forms of Egyptian society. In the later 13th dynasty, in the Eastern Delta, in the later 13th dynasty, the Eastern Delta was heavily settled by Asiatics. Source, Atlas of Ancient Egypt by Baines. What does it say? In the later 13th dynasty, which is still part of the Middle Kingdom, this becomes important. The Eastern Delta was heavily settled by Asiatics. To keep out from Egypt the continuous waves of Asiatics coming from the east, Amenemhet I, so that's to say Amenemhet I, constructed the walls of the prince. Source, T. James, Introduction to Ancient Egypt. The people depart fugitive, a mighty army is submerged in the deep sea. The only way of escape for the congregated people. Source, Wadi el-Mukatab. The Brooklyn Museum Papyrus and other brief notices demonstrate clearly the presence in Egypt during the 12th and 13th dynasties of a sizable Asiatic population of servile status, presumably brought back as the result of foreign wars. Source, Donald Radford in his book, Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Times. So brothers and sisters, what do, again, we care to point out for reference purposes? All right, is this, because this A, I want to be politically correct, was supposed to be capitalized, if we will, right? Here's the thing, when you're citing a book like that, all of the big words, that's to say any word that is 4 or more letters, has to be capitalized when you're signing it. Therefore, I have to capitalize the T in times. Sorry, only human. So just want that to be noted. All right, so let's look again. Wadi el-Mukatab, which is a Sanatic writing, In translation says, the people depart fugitive. A mighty army is submerged in the deep sea. What does that sound like? The only way of escape for the congregated people. They did walk into Egypt, but with all of the fortresses being built, like the walls of the prince in Dynasty 12, when the Exodus happened in Dynasty 13, they had to go out of Egypt through water. So these are things, again, we care to point out for reference purposes. Any questions or comments, please feel free to type it into the chat. Thank you. I think it necessary to mention these names, that I may disprove such as believe that we came not originally from Mesopotamia, but are Egyptians. Josephus, Book 2. After this, God bid Moses to put his hand, after this, God bid Moses to put his right hand into his bosom. He obeyed, and when he took it out, it was white, and in color like to chalk. But afterward, it returned to its wonted color again. Josephus, speaking about Moses putting his hand in his bosom. If Moses' wanted color was not white, what color was Moses? Now, I want to point two things out here, well, more than two. Wanted means usual or custom. W-O-N-T-E-D. That's what that means, right? I pointed this out over 10 years ago online. And somebody said, what's the color of righteousness? Look, nobody is saying when we start talking about people of color being of the ancient nations and that we are people of color who branch from one of those particular ancient nations, that it supersedes and trumps righteousness. We're not saying that. But if we're talking about righteousness, and if we're talking about a matter of not being a false witness, which is a sin to be a false witness, then why not get into this kind of subject? Not that's the main subject, not that that's the whole principal subject, but why not, brothers and sisters, sit there and talk about it? It's in the record. What's wrong with talking about it? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and moreover, he drew water for us and watered the flock. That Egyptian man, as cited there, was Moses, but he was not an Egyptian. So if Moses was thought of as an Egyptian, some people say by his clothes. Some people say because of what he spoke. Could be. It definitely serves to reason, brothers and sisters. But if we are to say, or if it is because of what he spoke, then brothers and sisters, that means they would have had understanding of languages in that manner. So to be bilingual, trilingual, quadlingual, that's to say to know 2, 3, 4 languages, is not uncommon in the ancient world. All right? Goes on to say this. Then the Lord formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Man came from the dust of the earth. Brothers and sisters, what color is that by the garden? Not too hard to figure out for reference purposes. You understand? So it's telling me that my battery on a computer is low, so I'm going to take a short moment and plug that in. Bear with me, family. Thank you for that. In that particular case, it's saying I may want to plug it in. Yes, I do. I want to be able to continue in the live stream that we're dealing with and what we're talking about. So let us, brothers and sisters, take out that time for such. Hoping and praying that everybody is well and will be better. I apologize for not having it already plugged in before the presentation and having to stop in this particular manner for the brief second for such. All right. Let us continue in this manner here. Thank you for that. As a computer or phones or so need a charging, we need charging too as humans. So eat better. And these herbs do work brothers and sisters and so forth. He gave us a diet already. I am not saying we should or should not be vegetarian and so forth and so on, but I will say this. If we look at Leviticus sidebar, if we look at Leviticus 11, all the animals that we are as Israelites permitted to eat don't eat meat. Did you know that? Shalom, my lady Sarai. My Shalom, Mac. How you doing? Did you know that? That all the animals that we as Israelites can eat do not eat meat? Deer don't eat meat. Giraffe don't eat meat. Yeah, you can eat a giraffe. Correct me if I'm wrong. It chews the cud and it divides the hoof. The animals that we cannot eat meat. Lions eat meat. The Lion of Judah, the Gadites having faces of lions. No, you can't eat that. You can't eat the serpent of Dan that crawls on its belly. You understand? There are certain animals we can eat and certain animals we cannot eat. But I want to say this. I give a lot of respect listening to Dr. Sebi. Everything Dr. Sebi said, nothing is against the commandments of the Most High God. Any Israelite, knowing the laws of Genesis, knowing the laws of Leviticus, did Dr. Sebi ever say anything as his advice against the laws of Yah? No. Even when Dr. Sebi spoke about his upbringing and the food that his mother gave him, he didn't dishonor his mother like the rapper Eminem did with his mother. Show me where the laws and the statutes were being broken. Did you know when you read in Leviticus that the Leviim, the Levites, are the doctors? What do you think it is? And they shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall see with his eyes about the matter of leprosy. He's a doctor. He's a rosé. From the word rapa, meaning what? To heal. Menekwet is the Hebrew word, one of them meaning nurse. The other word for nurse is omenet. Omenet from aman, meaning to agree, where you get amen from, or amen from. Hebraic thought. A doctor, a healer. The Levites, we pointed out in the presentation, had 48 cities throughout the land of Israel. We pointed this out on the channel, brothers and sisters, in the past. They were the doctors. Forsake not the Levite. That's in Deuteronomy 12. Patience, stick-to-itiveness. I found out again just this morning. I praise the Most High for that. I can never be atheist. I just knew those notes were in the garbage somewhere. I know it's probably the third time of me saying it. I'm just happy I found it. Look underneath by the bed. Oh, hold on. Let me pull all this. I showed the big notebook earlier. Those don't stay back from when I was a teenager. I never wanted to lose that. I think, yeah. Don't ever think that the Most High does not see. Sometimes the Most High allows you to see something that others don't want you to see. We always talk about that. The black man waking up to the true knowledge of Israel. Those Khazars ain't never expect us to wake up to this truth. So why do we think as Israel, we can sit there and hide things and be disrespectful like the brother Moreh Yiftach on Shomrei Habrit talked about perfectly last night, called closet sinners? Why do you think that that can sit there and be the case when the hoodwink was pulled from our eyes and we was able to see? We was not bamboozled, led astray, and run amok anymore. But yet, as Israel, we do it to one another. We hope and pray that you don't find this note. We hope and pray you don't find this letter. We hope and pray that this doesn't come out. Oh my gosh, it came out. Who are you angry with that something came out that you didn't want to come out? With Yah Ha-Elohim, the Most High. You're not upset with me, him or her, they or them. And when I'm not playing a pronoun game, you upset with the Most High who caused it to be. Just the same in this presentation. You understand? They hope that we never wake up to this truth. You're just black, brown people. You're an African American, two different continents named after European people. You're just West Indian. And we already went over India as a name came from Herodotus, the Greek. As my lady Sarai pointed out, what? India's old name was Punjab, not India. So we read in Psalms chapter 49, it distinctly says that what? They named the lands after themselves. America Vespucci, Barbados, Trinidad, Oxamarca, Jamaica. Thank you for typing that in. Yeah, it was Punjab. India as a term came from the Greek calling it that. And it just followed in suit. You understand? Do you know people don't call themselves Chinese? They call themselves Mandarin and other. And I found that out really in college. And I said, well, why? They said, well, because I'm paraphrasing. I had a East Asian friend, for the lack of a better term. And he was telling me that most people don't know Mandarin or this or that. So we just say Chinese, but that's not really that. Oh, okay. Cool. You understand? So it pays to learn, brothers and sisters. One of the worst things Israelites have done, and I grew up in this understanding, is not to praise myself in it, because it's the Most High who brings people in when he brings people in. Mommy didn't come to this understanding until she was 32 years old. Dad was not in this understanding. May both my parents rest in peace. My mother came into this after the age of 30. So she saw the Black Panthers. She saw the riots in the 60s. When the movie Men's Society, her and I watched it, and a guy that was the narrator in it said, when the riot stopped, the drugs started. My mother, I swear, was like, yeah, she shouted that out. Like, that's exactly the truth. She never taught me that after the riot stopped, the drugs started. But when we saw Men's Society, that movie, and the narrator Kane said that, yeah, she confirmed that. You understand? So these are things, brothers and sisters, that we care to bring out for reference purposes. We went over citing Retenu and Amu. Those are Egyptian terms for other people. You're not, and me and my lady been in Egypt. We went by the Giza pyramid. We went inside of the Giza pyramid. The second one that they said belonged to the king or the queen. I'm trying to remember which one we went into, but there's a picture of it, whatever. We went by the pyramid of Saqqara and all of that. We saw Demotic writing inside of Egypt, which is the priestly writing in their culture. I have yet, in any of the studies that I did, ever seen Mizraim inside of Egypt. You know why you may not find it? Because Mizraim is the Hebrews calling them something. They didn't call themselves Mizraim. Just as much as the people called the Kabiru did not call themselves the Kabiru. Any credible Bible dictionary will tell you the term Hebrews is a term that was called by non-Hebrews to whom they were talking about. Why do you think Jonah said, I'm a Hebrew? Because he's talking to people who are not of the house of Israel. You understand? So we went earlier last night in a thing called the civilizations influenced by the Kabiru. It's not too hard to figure out. Now, while we talk about that, let's look at this artifact that's called the Jacob Hor Skerab. All right? Jacob Hor. That's what you're looking at there on the right side. Jacob or Jacob Hor Skerab. That's dated to the 16th dynasty of Egypt. Two theories came when this was found. One is about Jacob being in Egypt during the Hyksos of Dynasty 16, which we come to understand is not the case. The other theory is it was in commemoration and honor of Jacob the patriarch. Because see, Yaakov is a Shemitic or Hebraic name. You understand? These are things we care to point out for reference purposes. The people called Hyksos, they're not call themselves Hyksos. And this ties in to what we're talking about, brothers and sisters, because we pointed out that they were Asiatics, or according to the Egyptians, Amu. But what did these people call the Amu? What did these people call the Retenu? What did these people call the Haikusho call themselves? Because according to the book called Before the Mayflower by LaRon Bennett Jr., right? According to that book, brothers and sisters, you had it to where the people brought off the slave ship was called Ethiopians. But they call themselves that, brothers and sisters. Did the people called Nubians call themselves that? Or does Nubia go to the Greek word meaning gold? See, when you're dealing with names and nations and peoples and so forth, that becomes important. Now, remember earlier when I showed that big notebook with all of the notes and so forth and so on, right? In it, I would like to, brothers and sisters, show this, if we will. And this, again, dates from years and years ago. One of the things that I try to push brothers and sisters to get their book out, in part, is because the Romans tried to make sure when they came into Jerusalem to destroy all that they could of the Israelite writings. Why do you think they burned down the Temple of Alexandria? They knew what they was trying to get rid of, brothers and sisters. So whether you have a audio book or a written book or both, get your book out. All right, something we care to point out for reference purposes, if we will. Brothers and sisters, I like to show, coming from that big stack of stuff that I showed earlier, right, what we're talking about in this particular case. And I'm going to show with the camera, which is odd of me to do, but this is the list of the different pharaohs. See, I use these kind of things as a source in this, and it goes all the way into different dynasties. Time you get to dynasty 16, it says Yaakov Baal, Yaakov Am, Yoam, Amu, and others. Part of that list here of the Hyksos era. Those are Shemitic names. Doesn't mean that they're Israelite, brothers and sisters, but nonetheless, we do want to point out, if we will, that Shemite people and Hamite people traversed that land back and forth and back and forth and back. You understand? Back and forth and back. It was not Ham only Africa, Shem only Asia. That was not how those nations operated and so forth. Some of them went to war. Some of them was at peace. Sometimes they had civil war. And what do nations do, like the Maroons in Jamaica did? When, for all the lack of intents and purpose, for the lack of a better term, for all intents and purposes, sorry, when a white man who were English and a white man who was Spaniards were fighting, the Maroons that were in Jamaica went to the mountains, brothers and sisters, and then they fought against the oppressors. They took advantage that their enemies were at odds with each other. That's what the Maroons did to get strong. That's what the nations do with us as well, to get strong. You understand? So, in unity, there is strength, brothers and sisters. So we never, ever want to forget that. Okay? Let us continue in this particular matter. The people in the east were brass color. I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with the fine gold of Upaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as torches of fire. Now, mind you, beryl is kind of like a bluish color, and his arms and his feet like in color to burnished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. So, brothers and sisters, did you know the lands, brothers and sisters, that Christopher Columbus came to in the 15th century? We're going to, brothers and sisters, point out that Christopher Columbus never came to what is called the United States of today, outside of the Commonwealth of the land called Puerto Rico in 1493. He went to Trinidad in 1498. He died in 1506, brothers and sisters. But the lands, brothers and sisters, that Columbus went to was not the Florida Keys or anything of that kind of sort. He didn't go to Connecticut. He didn't go to Texas. He did go to Venezuela in South America, but the majority of the places he went to from 1492 until 1498 or 1501, correct me if I'm wrong, in the dating, was all in the Caribbean of today. He described the people as being brass color, brothers and sisters. So let's look and see what is brass according to this particular matter right here. This becomes a part of the subject because they lied on the people. It only becomes a subject because the truth out now has to be brought out. Those coins that you see there is brass color. And we can see the two people there, whether brass or not. Now, as soon as his father had sent for David, and he was come, he appeared to be of a yellow complexion, and of a sharp sight, and a comely person in other respects also. Josephus, book 6. David was what you call a yellow in complexion. What people on earth call one another yellow? I'll wait. Please let me know. What people do we know of, putting two to two together, call one another yellow? Please let me know, because my complexion myself is not that far from the gentleman that's shown there on the right side. My mother's complexion, may she rest in peace, is what you would call light skin of today. We as so-called black people do call one another at times yellow. So that's just a citation from Josephus in that case. Citing also Josephus earlier, where we read about the particular matter of the hand of Moses being put in his bosom and what happened. Now, again, I am not saying that color equals or is equivalent to righteousness. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to promote on this channel. I want to go on record. Colorism, quote unquote racism, or anything of that kind of sort. But if we are not being false witness, brothers and sisters, then let us speak the truth as is. Cleopatra, the queen in Egypt, was not a black woman. Queen Tayi was. Queen Nefertiti was. You understand? Yedida, a leader woman in Israel, the mother of Josiah, was what you call a black woman of today. Cleopatra was not. You understand? Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, was what you would call a black woman of today. Cleopatra wasn't. She was from the Ptolemies people. So we are wanting to point out that you had different nations living among different nations. That's why it's not per se about color as much as it's about ethnicity. And then, not trying to be funny, it's not so much of ethnicity as much as about righteousness, but yet what is ethnically right for one people is not ethnically right for another. That's why Israel, we're commanded to keep the Shabbat. The other nations don't have to with the same kind of requirements. Israel is separated from the peoples. These are things we again care to point out for reference purposes. Conclusion. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. We hope and pray that you all learned from it. Remember, we are open to constructive criticism. We have more presentations scheduled, 1119, Creator willing, History of Israel through Jeremiah's eyes. This will be a 4-part series. We hope you all subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. We can be reached at 908-587-4841. Again, 908-587-4841. So, brothers and sisters, we ask you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe. To the people who took out the time to listen to this, it is appreciated. To the people who took out the time to listen last night, it is appreciated. What we're going to do to the people who did not listen to it last night and are listening to it now, or listen to it last night and care to hear it in part again now, we're going to go over a little detail about all the slides, all right? Just for reference purposes. Of course, we start by giving honor to the Most High, creator of heaven and earth. This is the gentleman here, Alfred Mahan, coined the term Middle East in 1902. We wanted to point that out. This is the gentleman, Thomas Gordon, coined the term. Some people say one did it, some people say the other did it, but we see who did it nonetheless. All right? Next, we have here going through this. I wanted to explain. So we are Africans, but we are not Israelites. Question mark, is the land of Israel geographically in the land of Africa? Question mark, those are questions being asked. I didn't state on a flyer whether I state what the answer is. I did it verbally in a presentation in this particular case. All right. So what you see there is the Danite logo, Danitepublications, should I say. The writing you see there is part of the Elephantine Papyrus from Aversa, Alabama. Is a book a brother wrote. This is a picture of one of the pharaohs. Some say Ramses, some say Thutmose. When I typed it in, this is one of the things that came up, so I'll just use it in that particular case. The writing that you see down there underneath the picture of that said pharaoh is from the walls of Karnak. This is actually further south in Egypt than where me and my lady was. So if you going toward a place called Siwa, you will see in part the walls of Karnak and what they did in capturing people in the ancient world. So let's continue in this manner. All right. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the Jews, the of Judah, that dwelt in the land of Egypt, that dwelt in Migdol, Tapanes, Nof, in the country of Patros. We use that citation ever so often to show, in part, the diaspora of the Israelites. All right. Next thing we care to show, Suez Canal, sea level waterway running north-south across the Isthmus of Suez in Egypt to connect the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. The canal separates the African continent from Asia. So when we talk about these ancient nations traveling, be they Shem, Ham, or Japheth, Thutmose, Ham, Jeremiah, Shem, Alexander, Japheth, there was no Suez Canal in those days, so they was able to travel a lot better between those lands. Then we show where the Suez Canal is, the Sinai Peninsula, and so forth and so on in that particular case. All right, the lands of the said Middle East. Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Egypt, Turkey, Palestine. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. All right, this is a map showing some of those lands there. We went over this last night. Just want to recap with this. Tectonic plates. We tried to bring it up collegiate, college level. This is now what you call earth science, if you will, brothers and sisters, in this particular case, right? Tectonic plates. Shown there. Notes from the encyclopedia. Israel is situated along the border between the African tectonic plate and the Arabian tectonic plate. So why do we say that there's no way that Israel, the land, could not be, brothers and sisters, in the lands that we today call Africa? Just pointing that out. All right? We went over this last night in that particular case. Where were you when I made the earth? God to Job. El is God to Job, Job chapter 38. The Great Rift Valley that goes all the way from Lebanon to Mozambique. And we know where Mozambique is. That's in Southeast Africa. All right, let's continue. And Elohim said, let dry land appear. Genesis 1. This is why Israelites who bash either Asia, Africa, or any other land is disrespecting the Most High, because the Most High made Africa. The Most High made Asia, or made the land that people later on called those names. You can't, as an Israelite, brothers and sisters, reading mainly about Hamitic nations and Hamitic lands in the Tanakh, in Genesis, Nimrod, Babylon, Akkad, Mitanni, Shinar is Suma, Suma, Shem, you had at the Tower of Babel different nations. So they didn't say, this is my continent, that's your continent. Those nations didn't do that. But if we're talking now geographically, we could see that the land of Israel, as pointed out, sits between the African tectonic plate and the Arabian tectonic plate. Let's continue on, brothers and sisters, in this. Now, this is a map showing the Sinai Peninsula, which, in part, we're going to point out, as we already did, that the land of Israel was supposed to be from the time of Abraham and what Solomon had. When it says from the great river, the river Euphrates, all the way to the river of Egypt, is not talking about the Nile. When it says river of Egypt, what it's talking about is the land that had the river that divided, as pointed out in the Sinai Peninsula. The Sinai Peninsula, according to this map in 1644, is part of continental Africa, long before the Suez Canal matter. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. The sedimentary igneous rock that you see there on the right side, that is the material and substance that the land of Israel sits on. Under the land of Israel is what we see there. Let's continue, brothers and sisters. All right? Genesis 11:31 and Genesis 12, verse 6, talking about going into the land of Canaan, and a picture of a Canaanite from archaeology. Just pointing that out, if we will. All right? From Ur Chaldee to the land of Canaan. And this is Abraham's migration. According to this, all the people that receives of color. Okay, so next we see from Ur Chaldees there, going into, making a U-turn, you might say, from there going north and then going down. Because they went to Haran and then they went south. Want to point that out, if we will. Next part, brothers and sisters. Scriptures on Shechem. Because Abraham went into the land of Shechem, and we see what happened in this particular case with the citations from Genesis 33, Joshua 24, 1 Kings chapter 12, and Jeremiah 41. Even after Jerusalem was destroyed, Shechem still had Israelites in it. All right, want to point that out. Regarding Canaan, begot Zidon, and the border of the Canaanite was from Zidon as thou goest toward Gerar. Some people teach and state that the Canaanites were not supposed to be in the land that became the land of Canaan, and that he took it when he was supposed to go to continental Africa. We're not teaching, I forgot the terminology, when you have a fear or phobia of other nations and peoples. We don't do that in the house of Israel. The Tanakh does not endorse the Talmudic, Rashi, whatever teaching about him being black, and because of this, and his lips became big because he lied. And when you start reading Jewish commentaries, you go into those kind of things, which is kind of ridiculous. One of the craziest and nastiest, and I say this, no disrespect intended to the day or to anyone who have their daughters listening, is they teach that in Judaism, that when Amnon, the rapist, hated his sister Tamar for doing that particular act, that her vaginal hairs grew so long after that act, and that's why he hated her. You can stay with Judaism if you want to with that kind of foolishness. You understand? On this platform and on most of the platforms I will ever subscribe to and push and endorse, we don't teach that kind of folly and foolishness. All right? So let's go on into this particular matter, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, if we will. Thank you, family. The order given to Noah's sons: go forth from the ark, thou and your wife and your sons' wives with thee. And God blessed Noah and his sons. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, which we already went over, means fill the earth. If I can be heard well, if people in good spirits, as we do the recap on the presentation, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard well and people in good spirits, as we go over this recap in the presentation, please type in the number 4. Thank you for that, family. All right. So, brothers and sisters, if it says to them, be fruitful and multiply, and we knew that the continental lands that we think and see of today did not have those names then we can't apply it to the ancient house of Israel's land either. Let's go on, all right? Let the book speak. Unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance. And we go from Psalms into Exodus and into Leviticus, speaking upon that same manner, all right? Thank you in that particular case, okay? Can I be heard? I'm asking because I can't hear myself the way I have it set. So ever so often I ask if people can hear me well, and if people in good spirits, please type in the number 4. That helps me out a lot. All right, right here we talked about the inheritance given to the children of Israel in the land of Canaan. And it goes on to speak about not for your righteousness. The reason why the children of Israel wanted them getting the land was because of a particular reason. The Canaanites' iniquity is what caused them to lose it. So we want to point that out in regard and say for edification purposes. All right. So let us continue in this manner, if we will. Thank you for that. It goes on to say, brothers and sisters, a battle of Anak and the Amorites. The Anunnaki in the Sumerian records is called the Anakim in the Bible in Deuteronomy chapter 9. Also mentioned part of them being the Amorites who were destroyed before the children of Israel. Next part, who was given what by who? And this is what we're going to talk about in this regard and close out. We just wanted to recap it for those who are interested. If the river, what they refer to today as Wadi El Arish of Egypt, is there, and the great river Euphrates is all both talked about in the book of Genesis chapter 18, right? How, brothers and sisters, can we ever think to name our land or any land where we want to be specific according to a continental matter when the nations then did not live according to a continental matter? Just want to point that out. So giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth. We hope and pray that everybody is well and will be better. Asking you all to comment, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Going to say shalom now, and we will continue in presentations throughout the day and throughout the weekend. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you can get the notification, and hopefully everybody is well and will be better. Shalom.